framed cop's heartbreaking plea to see his K9. The courtroom fell silent. The courtroom is dimly lit, filled with a hushed murmur of whispers that echo off high stone walls. Rain streaks the tall arched windows, its steady tapping a somber rhythm that matches the heavy mood inside. In the center, Ryan Carter sits handcuffed at a long, polished table. Once a decorated officer, his eyes now betray the deep pain of betrayal. His gaze is fixed on a reinforced cage at the far end of the room, where Valor, his loyal German shepherd, paces restlessly. The dog's amber eyes, normally calm and reassuring, now shimmer with an unspoken urgency. Ryan's mind races with memories. He recalls the long nights on patrol, the silent understanding between him and Valor as they navigated dangerous streets together. Every sacrifice, every risk taken in the name of duty, now seems to have been in vain. The familiar comfort of loyalty has been replaced by the crushing weight of injustice. His heart aches with the thought that his department, those he once trusted, turned their backs on him. A single desperate question echoes in his mind. Will he ever see Valor again? Across the room, a low murmur rises as Ryan's defense attorney stands. In a trembling yet determined voice, the lawyer makes a desperate plea. "Your Honor, all we ask is for one final moment, a farewell between a man and his partner. This is not a plea for special treatment, but a call for justice." Almost immediately, the prosecutor interjects with cold precision. "Mr. Carter, your actions have brought disgrace upon the force. A convicted officer does not deserve such privileges." The judge, seated at the high bench, studies Ryan intently. His face is set, in a mask of impartiality, yet his eyes reveal the inner conflict stirred by the undeniable emotion of the moment. For a long moment, the courtroom falls into an uneasy silence as the judge weighs the request, torn between rigid legal formalities and the palpable human drama unfolding before him. In the midst of this tension, all attention shifts to Valor. The usually disciplined dog begins to stir. His ears prick up and he slowly moves within the confines of his cage. A soft whine escapes him, a sound that seems to echo louder than the murmurs of the gathered crowd. Some spectators exchange puzzled glances. Others lean forward in their seats, wondering if the animal senses something that the humans have overlooked. The atmosphere grows even more charged as the judge takes a deep, deliberate breath. He studies Ryan's face, a face etched with both despair and a stubborn spark of hope. The gavel remains poised in mid-air, as if suspended in time, while every eye in the courtroom focuses on the impending decision. In that charged silence, Ryan's thoughts drift back to the countless times Valor had saved lives, including his own. He remembers their final mission together, how the dog had braved danger without hesitation, how their silent communication had spoken volumes in moments when words would have failed them. The thought of losing Valor, of being permanently separated from the one creature that had always stood by him, fills him with a sorrow too deep for words. Yet he keeps his emotions tightly guarded, determined not to show the world his inner torment. Then the silence is broken. The judge's voice, steady but laced with empathy, cuts through the tension. "After considering the request and the circumstances of this case, I am inclined to grant Mr. Carter a final meeting with his K9 partner. Let it be known that this court recognizes the unique bond between an officer and his service dog, even in the face of difficult decisions." A ripple of shock and relief courses through the courtroom. Ryan's heart pounds as he slowly stands, his hand still bound, but his eyes now alight with the possibility of hope. The judge's ruling sends a ripple through the room. No one expected such a decision. Outside, a storm brews, echoing the tumult of emotions within. As the courtroom holds its collective breath, Ryan steps forward. Every movement is measured, every step laden with the weight of his past and the promise of a bittersweet future. The distance between him and the cage seems insurmountable. Yet, with each step, the hope of one final goodbye grows stronger. The camera lingers on Ryan's determined expression as he nears the cage, the tension in his clenched fists visible even through the restraints. His eyes never leave Valor's, and for a brief moment the world outside the courtroom, The corruption, the betrayal, the endless battles fades into insignificance. The scene fades into a close-up of Valor's face, the dog's eyes, glistening with intelligence and unspoken pain, reveal an emotion that transcends words. In that silent exchange, Ryan and Valor communicate everything: their shared history, the depth of their trust, and the unbreakable bond that has endured despite every hardship. The camera then shifts back to Ryan, capturing the silent determination on his face. His internal monologue, soft and resolute, echoes in the background. "I will not let them take you away. No matter what happens, our bond will remain. We are more than the mistakes of this world." The courtroom, now quiet and expectant, seems to pause in a moment of collective realization. The judge's decision, though controversial, has opened a door to a chain of events that promise to change everything. As Ryan stands there, hope and trepidation intertwining in his eyes, the audience is left with a profound sense of anticipation. What comes next is uncertain, but one thing is clear. The unyielding bond between a man and his dog has just set the stage for a revelation that will shake the very foundations of justice. The sound of a ticking clock echoes through the courtroom, each second dragging out like a lifetime. Ryan Carter sits rigid in his chair, the cold weight of his handcuffs pressing against his skin. He doesn't move. He barely breathes. Across the room, his former colleagues, men he once called brothers, sit. In the audience, their expressions unreadable. Ryan's mind flickers back to that fateful night, the night he became the enemy. The memory plays like a nightmare, the whispered threats in the locker room, the choice they gave him: join them or pay the price. He chose integrity. They chose to destroy him. His so-called brothers in blue planted false evidence, twisted reports, and turned his life into a scandal. The media feasted on the story, painting him as a disgrace. The system he once believed in was now the weapon used against him. His once proud reputation, gone. His life's work, turned to ash. Back in the present, Ryan's jaw tightens. He fights the rising anger, the deep well of betrayal clawing at his chest. The weight of injustice is unbearable, yet he sits in silence. The only sign of his turmoil is the way his hands clench beneath the table, the metal of his cuffs digging into his wrists. Across the room, locked behind a steel cage, Valor lets out a quiet whine. Ryan forces himself to breathe. He scans the sea of faces, searching for something, someone who still believes in him. But every stare is either cold or indifferent. Does anyone see the truth, or have they all abandoned him? The only comfort comes from the restless figure in the cage, Valor, his canine partner, his best friend, his last ally. Even through the bars, Valor watches him. The dog's ears twitch, his body tense, his eyes locked onto Ryan as if he can sense the storm raging inside him. A low, almost imperceptible growl vibrates in his throat, not of aggression, but of unease. Ryan looks away. He can't fail him too. The courtroom proceedings continue, but something is wrong. Valor, usually a model of discipline, grows increasingly agitated. He doesn't sit still. His ears flick toward the crowd, his gaze darting between the spectators. His muscles coil, ready, alert. Ryan watches, his unease growing. What is it? Then Valor stops moving. His entire posture shifts, shoulders locked, body stiff, tail frozen in place. His amber eyes narrow, his focus sharpening on a specific point in the room. Ryan follows his gaze. In the back row, a man sits unnaturally still. He doesn't react like the others, doesn't fidget, doesn't lean forward in curiosity. His head is slightly tilted down, his face partially obscured by shadows. And yet, Ryan recognizes him instantly. His stomach turns to stone. The prosecutor stands, launching another cold and calculated attack against Ryan's character. Prosecutor: the defense would have you believe that Officer Carter is a victim. But let's not forget, this is a man accused of betraying the very badge he swore to uphold. Ryan doesn't react. He barely hears the words. His mind is elsewhere now. His defense lawyer fights back, but the odds are stacked against them. The system wants Ryan to lose. The judge, though fair, is bound by the law, and the law doesn't favor fallen officers. Ryan's gaze flickers back to the man in the back. He knows that face, knows those eyes, knows the weight of the lie they carry. It's him, the man who planted the evidence, the man who set him up, the man who ruined his life. And Valor knows it too. Ryan's pulse quickens, memories crash into him like a flood. The night his world shattered, the smug grin on that man's face when the arrest was made, the feeling of handcuffs clicking around his wrists, knowing the real criminal walked free. Could Valor have sensed it all along? Could his canine partner, the one soul who had never doubted him, be the key to proving his innocence? But who would believe a dog over sworn testimony? Ryan swallows hard. If this trial ends with a guilty verdict, everything is over. His freedom, his future, and worse, Valor. The department will take him, reassign him. Maybe worse, maybe they'll put him down. The thought is like a knife to the gut. Ryan can endure prison. He can endure the loss of his career. But losing Valor, losing the one being who never wavered in his loyalty, that would break him. He tightens his fists, his cuffs biting into his skin. He won't let that happen. The judge exhales, his fingers tapping against the polished wood of his desk. He scans the courtroom, taking in the weight of the decision before him. Every breath in the room seems to pause. Then, judge. This court will allow Officer Carter one final meeting with his K-9 partner. A ripple of whispers spreads through the audience. The prosecutor clenches his jaw, clearly unhappy. Ryan releases a slow, measured breath. He expected worse. He turns his head slightly. Through the bars of his cage, Valor's ears twitch. He heard it too. As Ryan rises, his cuffs rattling, Valor does something strange. He doesn't wag his tail, doesn't move toward the front of his cage like he usually would. Instead, he stays completely still. His gaze locked on the man in the back row. Ryan follows his stare. The man shifts in his seat. His fingers tighten slightly on the armrests. He's nervous now. Ryan clenches his fists. Something is about to happen. Something that will change everything. The courtroom is still. Ryan Carter, shackled and weary, steps forward toward the cage where Valor, his loyal German shepherd, waits. His heart pounds with each step, each dragging motion of his handcuffs. As he kneels before Valor, a single tear escapes his eye, tracing a line down his weathered face. His hands tremble as he reaches through the bars, seeking the familiar warmth of his partner's muzzle. "I'm sorry, buddy. This might be the last time," Ryan whispers, his voice breaking. Valor whimpers in response, his head pressing against Ryan's hand, his eyes filled with understanding. The bond between them is deeper than any words could describe. In this moment, they communicate without speaking, a final moment of silent love and trust. Ryan closes his eyes, pressing his forehead to the cold metal of the cage, as if trying to hold on to the comfort of his partner for just a little longer. He knows the stakes. This could be the end. And yet, in that shared moment of quiet, his heart yearns for the impossible, to turn back time, to undo the betrayal, to keep Valor by his side. But Valor is not just a dog. He's family, and this farewell, this painful, inevitable goodbye will change everything. As Ryan sits there, moments of the past flood his mind, the countless patrols, the quiet nights, where only Valor's presence gave him peace, the unwavering loyalty in the face of danger. The memories are a bittersweet balm to his wounded soul. He thought this would be their final moment, their last goodbye. But Valor's behavior is different. The dog, usually so calm and controlled, begins to stir. His body tenses, his ears flicking forward. His eyes, once soft with understanding, now gleam with something more, an urgency, a warning. Ryan's breath catches in his throat. The room, once filled with the echoes of his pain, now seems to thrum with tension. Valor knows something Ryan doesn't. Without warning, Valor springs to life, his muscles coiling like springs. He lunges forward, his body slamming against the bars with a force that reverberates through the courtroom. A collective gasp rises from the audience as security personnel scramble to act. The judge's gavel strikes down, but the chaos continues. Wait. Hay knows something, Ryan shouts, his voice urgent, filled with desperation. His body jerks as the guards yank him back, trying to force him into his seat, but Ryan fights them off, his eyes never leaving Valor. The dog continues to growl, his stance defensive, his gaze locked on the back of the courtroom. The air is thick with the sound of pounding feet, frantic whispers, and the rhythmic crash of Valor's growls. Valor's amber eyes are fixated on one man in the back row, a former colleague of Ryan's, now sitting eerily still. The man avoids the dog's gaze, his posture stiff, his fingers nervously twitching on the edge of his seat. The dog's growl intensifies, his body rigid, tail raised in warning. Every instinct in Valor's body screams that something is wrong. And it's all focused on the man in the back row. The room falls silent as all eyes turn to the man, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Ryan's heart pounds in his chest as he stares at the man, his mind racing. He knows this man, knows his eyes, knows the betrayal he carries. Suddenly, the man shifts in his seat. His movements are too quick, too nervous. Something falls from his pocket, a small metallic keycard. It clinks as it hits the floor, drawing everyone's attention. A bailiff quickly retrieves it and hands it to the judge, whose expression turns from curiosity to suspicion. Ryan's defense attorney recognizes it immediately. "That's the missing evidence," he exclaims. The courtroom erupts into whispers, but Ryan's lawyer is already standing, pointing at the keycard in the judge's hand. "That keycard was marked as lost in the investigation," the lawyer continues. "It's the proof we've been searching for, the evidence that was tampered with." Ryan's pulse quickens. The realization hits him like a punch to the gut. This keycard is the smoking gun, the evidence that will prove his innocence. The truth is finally coming to light. The man in the back row pales as the keycard is revealed. His face flushes with a mix of fear and guilt. He tries to explain himself, but his words are lost in the growing uproar. Valor, who once worked beside this man, never forgot the scent of betrayal. His growls turn into furious barks, each one louder than the last. Ryan watches in disbelief, the storm of emotions inside him swirling between anger and relief. He's been framed, but now the evidence is undeniable. His best friend, Valor, had never forgotten, and now his loyalty had uncovered the truth. The judge's voice is sharp, commanding. An immediate inquiry is to be launched. The keycard must be authenticated. His eyes burn with fury as he watches the man in the back, who is now visibly sweating, his hands trembling. The prosecutor scrambles to recover, but the damage is done. The room has shifted. The truth is out. The real criminal is cornered, and the entire courtroom knows it. Ryan's lawyer steps forward, his voice firm and confident. "Your Honor, this proves my client was framed. We demand justice." The prosecutor stares at the keycard, his expression darkening, but he has no defense. The evidence speaks louder than any words he can muster. Ryan's gaze falls on Valor. The dog's eyes meet his, filled with a depth of understanding and loyalty that words could never express. In that moment, Ryan realizes something profound. His canine partner, his last true ally, had just saved his life. The judge leans back in his chair, his eyes flickering between the keycard, the prosecutor, and Ryan. The courtroom is silent, stunned by the turn of events. Ryan feels the weight of the room pressing down on him, but within him there is a flicker of hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, the truth will set him free. As the judge calls for the inquiry, Ryan's heart swells with gratitude. Valor, his loyal companion, had never wavered, and together they had exposed the lies. The courtroom is left in stunned silence as the truth, sensed, not spoken, resonates through the room. Ryan and Valor, bound by a love and loyalty that transcends words, stand united once more. And for the first time in what feels like forever, Ryan believes that justice might finally be within his reach. The courtroom is still, the air thick with tension. Every person present holds their breath as the judge reviews the newly uncovered evidence. The keycard, proof of corruption, sits on the desk, gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. The real criminal, once hidden behind the ranks of trusted officers, is now detained, his face pale with the weight of his guilt. Ryan sits at the table, his hands resting stiffly, still bearing the weight of the shackles that have been with him for far too long. His heart pounds in his chest, a drumbeat of uncertainty and hope. The silence feels suffocating, as if the entire world is waiting for the judge's next words. His palms sweat against the cold wood of the table, the tension tightening around his chest. Will this nightmare finally end? He thinks to himself, barely able to breathe. His eyes flicker to Valor, who sits at his side, calm and steady as always. The dog's presence is a silent comfort, but even Valor cannot ease the uncertainty swirling in Ryan's mind. The courtroom is on edge, waiting for justice to be served, and for Ryan to finally be free. The judge raises his gavel, and the room falls into an almost unbearable silence. The charges against Ryan Carter are hereby dropped, he declares. His voice, once stern, now carries the weight of finality. Gasps ripple through the courtroom. A wave of disbelief and relief washes over Ryan, but as the words sink in, so does the weight of what they mean. He's free, but at what cost? The years he spent fighting to prove his innocence, the false accusations, the betrayal of those he trusted. It's all still there, lingering beneath the surface. Ryan's hands shake as the shackles are removed, the cold metal falling away with a quiet clink. But freedom feels different now, tinged with the scars of a life turned upside down. The weight of the past may have been lifted physically, but emotionally it's not so easy to escape. His heart still races, but now it's not fear that drives him. It's the weight of what he's lost and what he's gained. His eyes wander to Valor, his constant companion. The dog's amber gaze meets his, full of understanding. They don't need words, there's nothing left to say. As Ryan stands, the spotlight shifts to Valor. The K9, whose loyalty never wavered, whose instincts never failed, is now the focus of the courtroom's attention. People glance at the dog in awe, no longer just a companion but a hero. The dog's steady presence is a silent testament to the bond they share. Valor's coat gleams under the harsh courtroom lights, his eyes shining with a quiet dignity. The judge, visibly moved by the dog's unwavering loyalty, speaks to the courtroom, his voice softer than before. "Let it be known," he says, his words carrying the weight of deep respect. Valor played an integral role in uncovering the truth. Reporters scramble, their cameras clicking furiously, eager to cover the story of the K9 who exposed corruption, who saved a man's life. Valor, undisturbed by the sudden attention, remains calm, his gaze never straying far from Ryan. For a brief moment, the spotlight shifts from the injustice that had plagued Ryan's life to the undeniable truth. Valor's loyalty had changed everything. The dog's fierce dedication had revealed the darkness that others tried to hide, and in doing so, it had brought Ryan back to the light. The mood in the courtroom shifts dramatically as the former officers, once trusted figures in the department, are taken into custody. Their faces are pale, their bodies stiff with fear and guilt as they are led away in handcuffs. Whispers ripple through the room, but the sense of justice being served is undeniable. Ryan's lawyer, standing beside him, speaks quietly. "This is only the beginning, Ryan. The department's going to face intense scrutiny. The internal investigations will be thorough. The public eye will be harsh, and the fallout for those involved in framing Ryan is just beginning. But despite the darkness surrounding this moment, Ryan finds himself standing taller, his heart a little lighter. Even as the world begins to right itself, the scars of betrayal will never fully fade. But justice is being served, and that's enough, for now." Outside the courthouse, Ryan steps into the sunlight for the first time in months. The warmth of the sun on his face feels almost foreign, like something he'd long forgotten. He takes a deep breath, inhaling the fresh air, his chest rising and falling with the sense of relief that only freedom can bring. But it doesn't last long. His career, his reputation, the life he once knew, they're all shattered. There's no going back to the way things were. The badge he once wore with pride now feels like a distant memory, something that belonged to someone else. The uniform that once defined him now seems like a symbol of everything he lost. And yet, as Ryan looks down at Valor, who sits loyally by his side, something shifts within him. His identity is not in the badge, not in the uniform, not in the role he once held. It's in the bond he shares with this incredible animal, the bond that never wavered, even when the world turned its back on him. Ryan realizes, with quiet clarity, that while the past may be gone, there is still a future to rebuild, a future with Valor at his side. As the two walk away from the courthouse, the sun breaks through the clouds, casting a golden light on the path ahead. The future may be uncertain, but Ryan no longer fears it. With Valor by his side, he knows he can face whatever comes next. He kneels beside his partner, his voice breaking with emotion. "You never gave up on me, and I'll never give up on you." Valor licks Ryan's hand, the gesture simple but profound. No words are needed. Their bond speaks louder than any declaration could. In this moment, there's nothing else. Just the two of them, standing together, their futures intertwined. The story of Ryan and Valor quickly spreads beyond the walls of the courthouse. News outlets flood with headlines about betrayal, loyalty, and justice served. People from across the country and even around the world are captivated by the tale of the canine who never gave up on his master, who saved a life with nothing more than his loyalty. The public, moved by the story, begins to demand change. No innocent officer should ever suffer this fate again, they say. The demand for police reform grows louder, fueled by the example of one man and his dog who fought for truth against all odds. Ryan's phone begins to buzz with offers, interviews, book deals, even offers to work with K9 units, sharing his story and training the next generation of heroes. But even as the world sees him as a symbol of justice, Ryan remains focused on the one thing that matters most: Valor. As Ryan and Valor walk away from the courthouse, side by side, the world may not know what comes next. There are still battles to fight, both for Ryan and for the world around him. But one thing is certain: the bond between man and dog is unbreakable. The future may be uncertain, but together they are stronger than ever. And as the camera fades, their figures slowly disappearing into the distance, one truth remains clear. Some friendships aren't built on words, but on unwavering trust. And in this bond, Ryan and Valor have found the strength to face whatever comes next.